Now, I'm the CEO of a company that turns over probably not too far of $1 billion a year.
Jim, thank you so much for joining me on the bottom line today.
Yeah, good to be here.
Now, I am excited. I did say quickly before we press the record button, I'm a little bit nervous having you on the show. We have had amazing guests lately. We've had some really cool guests, but you are the master of small business, and our audience are small business owners. So I am really excited to have you on. And for those that maybe don't know the Jim's brand, and I'd be pretty silly not to know it with all your beautiful branding across the country, take us back to how it all started. How old were you? What was it? You and a lawnmower. I'd just love to just unpack the early stages of your first ever client.
Well, my first ever client was when I was 8 years old. I was in Cub Scouts raising money by Bob a job. So I walked on a guy who lived across the back fence from us and offered to raise some money. And he gave me a job which was raking his driveways and the other basic stuff for 2 shillings, which was pretty good money in those days. And so I did that for most of my childhood. Left school, I took a gap year before going to university, and I decided to have a bit of a go at starting a gardening business. And I advertised at $1.50 an hour, which even in those days wasn't very much. Constant clients, continued them through my studies. After a few years, I wanted to buy a car. That's about 1975.
Wow.
And I thought, well, I need a bit more money than that, than what, $2 an hour. So I decided to buy a lawnmower, which was quite a scary sort of thing, but I needed to pay off my car because I got a loan for it. So then I started doing lawns for most lawns $5. That was my price in those days because I could make then, potentially $10 an hour, which was pretty good money.
Yeah.
And, that was my student job. I did it all through my undergraduate years, and then I did a PhD, and it was good because it's outside, it's fresh air, exercise. I love gardening, still love gardening, still do a lot of gardening every week. And I intended to have an academic career. I was developing some ideas, very radical ideas about the way society works. And that was my intention, to go on being an academic. This whole gardening thing was just a pass by. And I got to the end of my PhD and I realized there was absolutely no possible way I was going to get any sort of academic job, not with the way I was thinking. But what I wanted to do was to continue with my research and expand it, going into areas, even though my field was in history, it was all based on genetics and so forth and biology. So I wanted to go into that field. So I had no money. I was $35,000 in debt. I was fat broke. I didn't have any useful skills of any kind. So what I did is I turned my part-time lawn mowing business into a full-time business. And that was in December 1982. And that was just something to be done until something real came along.
Yeah.
And over the next 2 years, I tried a lot of things. I built up and sold lawn mowing rounds. I started a computer shop, a mower shop. I tried Amway. I did all kinds of different things to try and find out how I was going to make some money to run my research institute. And that was this little mowing business just kept on going along and gradually getting better. And then in late 1980s, this company called VIP came from Adelaide, and they were a franchised lawn mowing company, which I thought was impossible. I didn't think you could even do it.
Yeah.
But they were big. They had hundreds of franchisees based in Adelaide. My thought was these guys are going to crush me, really just tap me up like an ant. Honestly, I even rang up the state manager and said, look, I don't think I'm going to compete with you guys. What if I just help to build up VIP in Victoria?
I love it. I love that. You actually rang the competitor and go, hold on a second. I'm really scared of you. Can I join you? Is that what you did?
Yeah.
Did I tell you
Not the franchisee, but just a sort of and he said, no, thank you. So I thought, well, okay, I better find out what these guys are doing. So I raided the franchise expo. That was in 1998. I went in, they gave you a little badge. I took it off from my pocket, walked up to the stand. No uniform or anything, just plain civvies. So I'm very interested in VIP. Can you tell me? Now, fortunately, he didn't ask me why I wanted to know, because I'm really bad at telling lies. So I would have told him, but he didn't ask. And he spent 15 minutes explaining the VIP system and gave me this brochure. And then the state manager came in and said, that's Jim Penman. Don't tell him anything else. So they kicked me off the stand.
Oh, there you go. That was scared of you, Jim, at that moment.
I was a competitor. He didn't want to launch a competitor, even though he. So I looked at what they did and I thought, hey, there's some point to this. I can understand why a person would join a franchise, getting going and support and ongoing, all this kind of stuff. But I reckon I could maybe produce something that would be better for the franchisee than what they were offering. That was my idea. So I basically spent 9 months arguing with lawyers mostly to try and get a contract. And they were pathetic. It really was very difficult to get what I wanted. Actually, they kept on complaining I was being too nice. That was the saying. You're giving your franchisees too much power. And I said, well, I wanted something that I want to join.
Yes, that's such a good.
That's not how franchising works. You told people what to do, and I said, no, I want my people to feel secure. And then I launched in June 1989, and somebody asked me at the time, what do you think you might achieve one day? And I actually said this is somebody who was in the media. I said, well, maybe if it goes well. I don't know if it will. Maybe if it goes well, one day I could have as many as 100 franchisees. That was my stretch goal.
Yeah, wow. I'd love to know how long it took to get to 100 from 1989.
About 18 months.
18 months. Wow. How did you scale it? So you finally got the documents from the lawyers that you were happy with, which took a while. I'm assuming you paid a lot of money for that, but let's not get into that. You're now someone's told you it's 100 is your stretch goal. How did you then go, okay, I got to scale this. I got to get franchisees on board. I got to be able to persuade them that this is a good business for them, blah, blah, blah. How did you go through that person and that sort of scaling and getting that sales? What did that 18 months look like? And how you would have been stretched. So I want to get a bit of feel for who supported you and that 18 months journey to the 100.
Well, basically I had a decent start because I used to build up and sell lawn mowing rounds. And I really tried to look after people. You replace their jobs and I give them advice and stuff. I've been charging for it. And the way I used to sell it was lawn mowing rounds. Was when anybody bought a lawn mowing round off me, I would get their name and their phone number in black text on a bit of white card, and I stuck it behind me in my office. And if anybody's interested in buying a business off me, I'd say, well, look, and I say, well, look, if you want to, if anything about me, bring up any of those guys and just ask them. So they'd ring up and ask them, and they'd say, Jim was a great guy. It was great to deal with. He gave me valuable stuff. He always gave me advice. He replaced any clients that dropped out. Fantastic guy to work with. So they sold the business. So when I wanted to start, I went to some of the people some of these people who bought lawnmower around, some of the really good ones that I kept in contact with because I was, and there was some of my subcontractors were very good too. So that was my first dozen or so franchisees fairly quickly. And then people were coming in to buy lawn mowing rounds. And I said, well, what about a franchise? And I made it very easy. They could just walk away if they wanted to. They could just take the signs off and go. So
yeah. I think you still do that. I don't know, obviously it was done all properly. One of my clients was a chef. This is a cool story. And a really good chef in an amazing restaurant, in Victoria. It was his career. He was an apprentice chef. And he just got sick of having these really long hours and being stuck in a stuck in a dark kitchen for most of the day. And he goes, after COVID, he's like, I can't do this anymore. He bought a Jim's Mowing franchise. He just had a love for gardening. It was a bit of a green thumb. And it bought it off another Jim's Mowing franchisee. It wasn't super, super expensive. It was kind of like buying a job, but, on your own terms. And this young gentleman just thrived in that environment. But at the end, he ended up parting way with the Jim's Mowing franchise. I don't know the story, but you changed so many lives. You must be so proud.
Yeah. I don't want the idea of holding a person by force in a system. If I don't see the value of the fees, we don't make it difficult. We may charge you a few $1,000s. Don't know if you don't even do that. Just if you don't really see the blessing, then go. And often people who leave us are some of our best advocates because they say it was so good to start with you guys. No one to be now. Fine. If you don't see the value. Now, most people don't do that, actually. It's interesting. Most people even take no lead, and they're so busy to take no leads at all. Mostly they stay with us. One of the jobs I do every month is I ring up my 10 and 20 and 30-year veterans on their anniversaries, which is a fun job.
That would be fun. Yeah, they probably wouldn't get off the phone. They want to be talking to you all day. I'd love for you to call me, but unfortunately, I haven't bought a Jim's bookkeeping or accounting services, so I might not get that phone call, Jim. But I'm very fortunate to have you on the call today. I want to change it up. So you got to this 100. Back then, franchise models and franchisee models probably weren't they're probably not as popular even today as it is in the US specifically. How did you try to educate those franchisees that would have gone, what the hell is a franchisee? Or why can't I just get a lawnmower and do it myself? How were you able to sell the value to them, and how does your team still currently sell the value, and has it changed?
We don't sell the value. We have a nuclear option, which is the key to the success. What you do is you give a perspective by a list of your current franchisees with their contact numbers, which the franchising code says now you have to do, but in the old days you didn't. But we always used to do it because people would come to me and say, look, you're running a business from your basement, basically, which is pretty shabby. No expenses spent on anything besides advertising, but it's very ordinary. VIP with my main rival, they had a fancy office in South Melbourne. They went to state and stuff, so they're a lot more impressive. And people would say, "Well, why would I buy it from you?" And I said, "Well, there's differences," and I explain them without bagging them. But I say, "Here's a list of my franchisees. I want you to go away and bring as many as you possibly can, and then go and get their list and bring theirs." Now, I knew they wouldn't provide one. That was the thing. I knew they wouldn't. But my people, when they asked, they'd bring up and say, "What's this about Jim?" Both of us be, "Oh, no, Jim's is much better. We get this and this and this. Yeah, she'd be crazy to go anywhere else. Yeah, it's fantastic. I've turned my wife for land. I'm making so much money. It's the best thing I ever did. I wish I'd done that kind of statement." So
For you,
with it, I wasn't selling anything. It was me originally selling, but I wasn't selling. We actually have a saying for this thing. We call it selling by not selling. In fact, we had a very strange policy in those days, and generally speaking today, service franchises are not selective. Now, I was determined I wasn't going to have people fail if I could possibly avoid it. So I used to screen people so people can go to VIP and just sign. You wanted to sign with me, you had to go through a process. You had to be interviewed. You had to go out on the road. You had to get checked off by one of my trainers to see if you were good enough to be in gyms. And we were the little guy. You think of that attitude. And they got to the stage where they wanted to be. They'd be out there trying to convince the trainer they were good enough to be in gyms, which is true because we still do it today. If a franchisor puts through, we had a case not too long ago where a franchisor put through to training a young guy, and his mother got in contact with me later about some problem with the contract, and I find out that she's buying the franchise on behalf of her son, and her son couldn't find a job in his early 20s. And I said to her, "We're not going to sell you a franchise. That's not going to happen because that's a recipe for failure." And she said, "Oh, I really wish I hadn't rung you." And I said, "Well, it's jolly good you did because she would have blown your money." She said, "What does he do? What can he do?" I said, "Well, there's a couple of guys in his area. He's got plenty of work. What if he goes out and sees if he can have a job with them?" So we sent him out on the road with two of the operators. He was absolutely hopeless.
well, good call on you making sure he didn't blow his money. Yeah,
Well, I was furious at the franchisor, so much so that when his regional franchise came up for renewal, we said, "You're going to sell." It wasn't the only reason, but that was horrifying. You should never put a person on unless you've got every reason to think they're going to succeed. So we had this kind of attitude that it's like an exclusive organization, that you've got to be good enough to be it. And we will fail people from training. If somebody acts badly during training, induction training, we'll fail them. And they can't have a franchise. We'll fail franchisors too, prospective franchisors. So you take that attitude because the whole idea behind everything I did is that we are there for franchisees first. Our first priority is welfare of franchisees. You would have seen it in my email. It's at the bottom. We're also passionate about customer service. We sign only franchisees and franchisors we're convinced will succeed. It's been there 36 years. That is 37 years coming up now. That is the core mission. And you don't put a person on who looks like they might fail because it's not in their interests.
So the screening process is amazing. But what I heard there a lot was training and development and doing it the right way, because it's just grown and grown and grown. And to the point where you've got such a amazing recipe in the way that you're obviously on board the franchisees, you train them, you're quite strict on, only taking on the few, to the point where they're begging to be a juice franchisee. I do like that.
I wouldn't say it's the normal process of begging, but I mean, that certainly is an attitude to an extent, because they do know they have to get through the trialing process.
Yeah, no, I do like that. When you then expanded the offering to, Jim's Plumbing and Jim's Electrical and all those other sort of income streams, or not income streams, but business units, Was it just repeating that really core belief of making sure you get the right people and you train them exceptionally well around what? Is it obviously technical? They've got to be good at mowing the lawns, but it's not a hard skill to mow lawns. What was the X factor you were teaching them? Was it customer experience? Was it follow through? What would you say it makes, because they're all small businesses. I want a small business plumber, electrician that's got their own brand, or a bookkeeper to go, we got to do it the Jim's way. What is the X factor? Or are you allowed to even tell us? Is it the spicy sauce secret, or what is it?
Well, there's a relentless focus on customer service. We take it extremely seriously. We have systems of complaint recording, warning letters, surveys, all kinds of things. I hit it really hard in training. The first time they come to training, my first talk, which is an hour and a half, is mainly about customer service, also about service to franchisees. So we really, really push it. We're a tough system. We told him there's some things he's not going to like about it. Like, we charge things called lead fees because we know that's the way to get people to turn up the job. When you've paid you for lead, they might need to follow up. There's all kinds of things we do. So we really hit customer service. I will personally get involved in a customer complaint. If a customer has a problem that's not being properly looked after by a franchisee or by the franchisor who should, then I will get involved and follow up. Now, I'm the CEO of a company that turns over probably not too far of $1 billion a year. It's fairly unusual for a person to get involved with somebody who's got a bit of problem with their fence, but I still will look at it. Now, it's not my job to fix it. I've got to give a big kick up the backside of those who should have been doing it. And if necessary, I will contact the client myself and I'll chase it through. But that relentless focus on customer service is so important. And that's what we teach people. And we find that because of the selection process, because of the indoctrination, because of the training, because of the ongoing coaching and dealing with complaints, our franchisees tend to give very high levels of support. And actual fact, we have a system, because we have massive numbers of unserviced leads. We've had more than 200,000 unserviced leads in the past year because demand is so huge. We actually sell some of our surplus leads to independent contractors.
Oh,
It's
okay.
just
Wow.
And with that, it's very rigorous. If they don't follow up, don't follow up consistently, we will kick them off. But much as we select and we screen and we coach, it's extremely difficult to get independent contractors to live up to the standards of our guys because our guys are so indoctrinated with it.
It sounds like you run a relentless, like a football club where, recruitment is seriously big component of key success factor, training, development, and pushing being really tough on your team and in standards. And then obviously the fans are your customers and making sure you win the game and play to your fans in the right way. It's amazing. Did you ever do any coaching in sport at all? Because I can just see so many analogies in there.
No, not at all. I have to say though, Sevan, the focus is really on franchisee welfare first. Now, we're passionate about customers, but why? Why? Because we know that if we look after customers really well, first of all, the leads pour in. It's more effective than any amount of money on marketing, just reputation of a service. But also we know that any individual franchisees who gives good customer service, our statistics prove this. If their service is better, they're far more likely to report good or satisfactory income. Something like 91% of our franchisees report good or satisfactory income, mostly good. But some don't. So those that don't tend to have poorer customer service. We also look very strongly at attrition rate. Now, we lose something like 12% of our franchisees in the first year, compared with something like 90 to 95% for independent businesses. We lose about 12%, but that's not random. The people who leave tend to be those with poorer standards of customer service. So this whole relentless pushing, which sometimes they don't like, they get quite annoyed, upset. They start undermining their mental health with all these complaints. I get these kind of stuff. But we know that if they give great customer service, they're far more likely to do well themselves.
Yeah. If I hadn't done this podcast now, I would have done this regardless in my business. We were very fortunate enough to understand this in our business. Maybe I did it too late. We actually recently hired a customer success manager in our accounting firm. And to be honest with you, I probably should have pulled the trigger on that years and years ago. And it's funny, the gentleman that owns that role is quite relentless and quite full on around the customer. And I think he's got the right DNA. So I think I've got a feeling he might have even read your book. So I reckon you rub off on a lot of people across the world and across Australia. I do want to touch on larger businesses. Yeah, you have been openly critical of traditional corporate management structures. What do most sort of the larger businesses get wrong about scale?
I would say one of the key things that any leader should do is to be in touch with the shop floor,
Mm,
with the basics. Like I give my phone number and email address to every franchisee. We've got close to 6,000 now franchisees. Every single one of them has my phone number, my email address, and they've invited me, in fact, urged again and again, you contact me anytime. Office hours, after hours, weekends, public holidays, Christmas Day. You got a problem, you contact me. Now, people think that's crazy. How could you possibly do that? Now, and I probably had contact with, I don't know, a dozen franchisees a day for some reason or other. But it's actually a very small part of my time, but it's incredibly useful because I know what's going on. Now,
feedback.
a lot of the time they'll contact me and it's not really a problem with them, with the problem with them, not with the franchisor. But sometimes it's the franchisor. You've got a franchisor who's not providing good support. So then I get involved and say, okay, why aren't you doing this? Or why haven't you paid this pay for work guarantee thing? Or they'll look at problems in the system. What's going wrong? Why is this person not doing it? As I said, we have a system called pay for work guarantee where you can, franchisees who are new aren't getting a certain level of income can go out and do free services, which we pay them for. And that's a way of building their business. Now, I found one division, for example, where the guy complained that the pay for work guarantee was impossible to claim. It was fencing because you can't go and offer a free fence. Now, we never had any claims until then. But as soon as I saw that, I went back to the franchisor. This is hopeless. You've got a pay for work guarantee system that is actual. It's impractical. So immediately what I did is set up a system so that you only have to give a quote on a fence and we'll pay you $80. You don't have to do that. You just have to quote on a fence that's not already given to you as a client. So I just use that as an example of the kind of thing where people can come to me with a problem or an issue and I'll look at it and I'll say, okay, we've got to change this. And the most crucial people are the franchisees. So if they've got a problem with anything, I want to know, and then I want to see what we can do about it.
Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned systems. One of the things we're doing here again is just really focusing on our SOPs and systems, the way we operate. And I've been sort of sharing that with some of my larger clients, and they're like, "Oh, systems kill culture, and you're turning all your staff into robots, and they're just following a process." But I really feel like if you don't have a process, people just kind of don't. It's all in everyone's head. They don't follow it the way that you portraying it to your customers. You do need to systemize it, and we've trying to take that relentless approach.
You have to measure things, Sevan. You have to know what you're doing. You can't just say we give great customer service. That's what most businesses do. They just assume their customer service is good, but it isn't. It's just not good. And we see this all the time. People just don't know how bad their service is.
How do you? We're about to do this because it's part of our journey. What advice would you give to me, who I'm a sort of a larger accounting firm, but it doesn't really matter? How would I best get customer feedback? Obviously, I can talk to people, but that's going to be slow. How could I get it in scale? What do you think that's the best way to do that in terms of trying to get a quick feedback?
If you're the manager of the company, which is presume your situation, I would be approaching the customers directly and telling them repeatedly, contact me personally if you have any issues. I want to know anything that goes wrong. It sounds like it's a huge job, but it's actually not that big because people don't tend to ring you. In fact, the biggest problem, they don't contact you when they should. But then if somebody's dealing with somebody who's one of your people and they're getting frustrated, well, you know what's going on. Now, it may be that it's their fault, but it may be one of your staff members just not letting them down. How would you know?
How would you know?
Apart from the fact that you lose them and you don't understand why. So you measure. You got to measure all the time how people are going. We survey our customers. We survey our franchisees. We have numerical standards. Like if you get complaints, okay, 4 complaints, at least 4% of total leads within 6 months, you get a warning letter. Now that goes to the franchisor first, who can object.
Yep.
But if they don't, it goes out. Then we follow again. If the same thing happens again, they get a breach notice and they don't get any work until they've done a retraining course. And then after that, every complaint gets sent to me. So it's a very rigorous, tough process. It's all based on numbers.
That's so good. I'd love to see some of your dashboards. So we have a saying, if you can't measure it, you can't manage it. So you must really hone in on that. Was that a thing that you learned early in your tenure? When did that sort of real relentless data and making decisions and feedback through data really kick in?
Look, I've always been relentless. I just have this attitude, which is to me the single key attitude in business, that whatever you're doing, I want to do it better.
Yeah.
I always got the assumption that we can do things better. And you just keep on pushing and pushing no matter what it was. In the beginning of gyms, we weren't recording complaints very well. Now, I asked the staff to actually, the call center staff to record a complaint so we could have a measure. So it's a specific kind of message on the computer. But then I was taking the calls. I was taking a share in the calls, which I used to in those days sometimes. And what I found out that I was taking, 2% of the calls and recording 10% of the complaints.
Yeah.
So I realized immediately they weren't actually taking a proper notice of what a complaint was. So they started a more rigorous process of selection. So you have to train the call center staff. Now, it only happened because I saw it. But the funny thing is, when it went in New Zealand, they were running a separate call center in those days. It's all the same now.
Yeah.
And they would say, "Oh no, we don't need this stuff, Jim, because our customer service is so great." Really, unlike you Australians, we do it so well over here. We need all this measuring garbage. So
Measuring garbage. I love it.
I got them to do it, and I found out that their actual complaint rate was substantially worse than Australia. But they didn't know that. People don't know it. They don't know how bad their customer service is. It's just shocking to me how badly people do things. Let me give you an example at a greater level. It's probably more like your kind of company. Some time ago, we wanted to employ some consultants. Now, we're talking about a 6-figure consultancy. We got a list of people that were recommended to actually help us with this, and we contact 6 different companies for what we're talking about is 6-figure consultancy now, major accountants, business advisors. One respond 3 months later. The other 5 didn't even respond to their ruddy emails. Now, that's just insane.
Yeah.
I had a situation once where I wanted to approach one of our competitors about something to do with some pool thing, but I couldn't get one of our guys to do it. And I contacted them, sent an email address, not a skerrit, no response. Now, if you ask that company, they'll say, "Oh, we have great customer service." No, you don't. They didn't read your emails, for heaven's sake.
I was speaking to someone yesterday. He's running Facebook ads, and I'm always interested. I've never done that before. I said, "Oh, how many leads do you get?" I said, "Oh, they're all a bit tie kickers. I get about 300 leads a month." A busy guy. How do you respond to all of them? Like, is there automation? I said, "Oh, I haven't built automation, but if they look like they're kind of, nothing that I want, I just ignore them." I'm like, if you get 300 leads and you're putting all these things out there and you're not responding to them, 300 by 12, you're telling 3,600 people that you don't give a shit. And I'm like, I didn't say that to him. I was thinking in my head, I'm like, well, I don't know if I'd put that out there, because you might get one lead out of the 300, but those 299 think you're a dickhead for not excuse my language, think you're not calling me back. So you're kind of really ruining your brand profile. So I really love that. You can't even get back to my email. It's really funny. Again, our customer success manager was, when he first joined, and I probably shouldn't say this because it's kind of giving a bit of a background of our firm. We actually had a lead come through and he went to this random info at email, and he went to our office manager or someone in admin, and he came in and first he goes, "There's a lead. Looks like an okay lead. No one's actioned it for 6 days." You're never going to win. What the hell's going on? So we're changing that up, Jim. I'm definitely going to approach the gym customer experience journey. I love that.
It's not about 6 days. We have a rule, Sevan, 2 hours. If we don't respond to a customer within 2 hours, and if you don't get through, you send a text. That's a complaint. You get enough complaints, you can be breached and terminated just for not responding within 2 hours. And 2 hours is a long time. It should be 2 minutes.
Yeah, well, I think Andre said to me, the customer success guy now, he said, "Oh, well, look, you're doing it in 6 days. How about we try 4 hours?" I'm like, "Oh, yeah, I think that's okay, 4 hours." If he listens to this podcast, I think he's going to change it to 2 minutes. I might need to hide it from him. But no, we want to...
So when I respond to my own emails same day all the time, no matter what they are, everything.
That is amazing. That is amazing. I want to talk about leadership. You are an aspirational man. You obviously, people look up to you. What are your leadership philosophies? How do you, if you were running a small team, and you obviously have reports even to this day. Tell me about leadership, because we have this saying in our business is leadership is a difference maker. It's leadership that's generally the problem, and it's leadership that's the solution. What's your view on your personal philosophy of leadership?
When it comes to franchisees, which is my major concern, our model is servant leadership. It's Jesus washing his disciples' feet, which, if you think about it, was a very radical thing to do, because in those days, only slaves, low people would wash somebody's feet. It was a really disgusting, filthy job because their feet got so dirty from, dusty
Yeah,
roads.
never
Now,
thought of it that way.
occasionally, a really revered rabbi, his disciples would wash his feet as a sign of respect, but Jesus washed his disciples' feet. That that model that we're here to serve as leaders, everybody knows that. We're the only franchise system in the world that allows franchisees to move to a different franchisor or even a different division for no other reason that they're not happy with their franchisor. We're the only system in the world that allows you to vote out your franchisor. Simple majority vote of franchisees can vote out the franchisor, force them to sell. Nobody else does that. We allow franchisees to veto changes to their manual. We've given our franchisees the right to veto any sale of majority control of Jim's Group. It's in the contract. We cannot sell Jim's Group controlling majority share without the written consent of the majority of franchisees. I've done that so after I'm gone and dead and no longer going to protect them, they're going to have some protection. And we're also going to put an elected person on the board. That's part of the whole setup. So the whole model is we are there for the franchisees, their welfare, and number one. Now, obviously, we have to make something out of that, or the thing won't run. But that's the model of leadership that I value.
Yeah, I love that. There's a lot to take on that. Surely not everything's gone right in your journey of business, Jim. And I'd love you to reflect back on maybe short term or even back further. I'd love to know what went wrong, and if you had your time again, what would you do differently in some of the things in the past?
Sevan, you told me we had 40 minutes. You want 4.5 hours.
We love stories on the bottom line. I'd love to hear one of those stories that we can have 4 hours. It's all good.
The biggest
engagement will be high.
The biggest single mistake that I make is, and I go rushing into new ventures that I don't understand. I'm going to start to count the things. There's my computer shop. There's a whole lot of resort that just about bankrupted me in the early days. I've tried trade exchanges. I've tried that a couple of times with disastrous results. I've tried funding a psychology institute, building fiberglass traders in a factory, and I'm just starting to get going with all this too. I made so many stupid decisions by jumping into things I don't understand, but they look interesting and they look fun, and I'm a bit restless, and I lose money in all of them. So that's my biggest and worst problem. I also have a problem with the back office side. I'm a enthusiastic leader. I talk okay, but I'm not very good at controlling things the way they operate. I've made some terrible mistakes in staff, put on staff. We've actually lost me millions of dollars, literally, including one couple who stole money and all kinds of things. I've now got my wife, who's an amazing lady, and a couple of her good mates, including her sister, who are really, really focused on the back end, and they're trimming costs, and they're fantastic. So,
yeah, do you see when things like that go wrong? I feel like there's a little bit in common. I hear you. I get really excited. Our accounting firm. I just tell a little story here. So we started the accounting firm. Well, we didn't start it. I became a partner of a firm that's been around for a long time, but it was just an accounting firm, provided accounting and tax. And once I became a partner and settled in, I'm like, we've got all these customers. We surely can sell more to these customers. So 7 or 8 years on before from that decision, we've now got a general insurance business, a bookkeeping business, we've got consulting, we've got wealth, we've got finance, and I've kind of gone and created a little mini Jim's Mowing kind of thing. But I get super excited like you. We started doing some offshore work, and I'm like, oh, we should start an offshore business, and now we've got an offshore business. So I get super excited, and I have to say, you do tend to make mistakes because you don't see the blind spots. You get enthusiastic by the momentum of what that idea is, and always seeing, sometimes being glass half full can also become quite dangerous because it ends up overspilling and you're losing a lot of water. So
We do tend to be optimistic, otherwise you wouldn't do what we do. You always think things are going to work out better than they do. So
yeah,
you have to be optimistic. But the thing you've got to bear in mind too, if you go into a business that's very different from what you understand, where you don't understand, think we don't know what's doing, it's a really steep learning curve. Now, what people don't understand about us, it looks like we do everything, but in fact, we're extremely narrow focused. The difference between lawn mowing and cleaning and test and tag and pest control and building, they're all very, very similar businesses. They all have the same kind of contracts, the same kind of customers. It's extremely similar. We go to them. Now, we tried once doing health centers. Absolute disaster. We didn't know what we were doing. The people actually who got involved did very badly, which is very hurtful. Including my wife, I might say, in the early days, we went with some partners. We just didn't know what we were doing.
Yeah.
So that's really, really difficult. And a lot of it's just understanding. To me, one of the greatest virtues in business is humility, just to recognize what you don't know and what you're not good at. You've got to be confident in some things. You've got to have certain kinds of abilities, but you've also got to recognize that, hey, we make terrible mistakes. And when a lot of things we just don't know.
And what's the future look like for gyms at the moment? So obviously you're expanding all the time, always looking at growing and trying different things. What does it look like in the next few years? And I do want to ask about the AI question that's coming up later on, but just very quickly, what are you looking at as a strategic leader and CEO? We always have to look into the future and think a few steps ahead. What is that for you, Jim?
The most exciting areas are in technology. I wouldn't necessarily say AI, but in technology, we're developing this program called Jimbo, which is helping franchisees to run their business. Now they've had business programs for years, but you've always provided. But this is way beyond. Now, within the next couple of months, we're going to have two things that are really important. The first one will be a system that will allow franchisee, if they wish, to have jobs booked straight into their diary. So when a customer rings up, the system will work out where they are. They'll tell them how much time they've got. And instead of the customer being told, hey, somebody will ring you back within 2 hours, the customer will be given a option. Would you be home between 2 and 4 this afternoon? So they got an appointment already. And that's a very major fact, because that means that their conversion rate is likely to be a great deal higher, because often franchisee can't ring them back and they may ring somebody else. So we can actually improve our conversion rate by, say, 10 or 15%, which I think we can with that.
Yeah.
That will make a huge difference. And the other thing we want to do too is to allow franchisees to be able to sell the right to service regular clients. Now, that doesn't sound very exciting from the point of view of anybody from the outside, but you got somebody with a regular cleaning or dog wash or mowing business. What they have is regular clients. They start off over a wideish area because they got to get busy. They have a territory where they got right of first refusal, but they tend to get stuck on that client base. So now what we want to be able to say to them is, okay, you're knocking back work close to home, particularly in your territory. Why don't you sell off your outlying customers to somebody else, say a new franchisee coming in or somebody who's got that territory, and then pay off franchise fees, so you don't pay so much to us, and then take more work close to home. And then you do it again and again and again and again. All the time you're making money, your fees are going down, but your travel is becoming less and less and less. And eventually you get to the stage you're actually only working in your territory. Now you can make the difference that would make is you could probably make an extra $20,000, $30,000 a year for the same time, simply because you're doing multiple houses in the same street. So that kind of thing, using technology, and then you've got to rate the person when you buy a business customers, you've got to rate the customers. They're well priced, good customers, this kind of thing. So there's all technology involved with that. Potentially, that's phenomenally important, because it would mean more likely franchisees to stay with us long term and see their income steadily rise. Or if they prefer, their income stays the same and their work hours steadily drop, so they spend more time with their family. That kind of thing. And that's where we've got a super advantage now, which is completely different from the early days, because we spend millions of dollars a year on software development. We are rewriting all of our systems in a new. We are really, really heavily invested in technology.
Yeah, love that. I've got two more questions. One of them is about pricing. One of the other challenges that we have in the accounting firm is not necessarily challenges, but we're thinking about how we price our clients, how we even get paid. Is it a retainer and so on? But we provide labor no different to a lot of your franchisees and the businesses. What's your view on pricing, hourly rates, solving a problem? Because at the end of the day, we're solving outcomes. Like, I don't want to paint my house or mow my lawns, and I will pay someone to take that burden away from me. I personally don't look at it as an hourly rate. I look at it and going, what are you saving me? What time am I getting back with my kids? And I value that in how I do it. Still believe that there is a fee, a market fee for it. How have you kind of thought through hourly rates, cost of labor, how we charge over the years, and what's your pricing philosophy now?
Okay, we don't do hourly rates so we can possibly avoid it. Two reasons. First of all, because clients tend to be unhappy because they don't know how much they're going to get done. Secondly, more important, because quoting an hourly rate makes it harder to get the kind of high hourly rate that our people want. We work on $70 an hour. Any franchisee should be able to make that. Some of them make a lot more, like $150 an hour. You'd be surprised. Okay. So you charge a fixed price for a job. Now, fixed prices, but also one thing we're very strong on, we charge high prices. We do not compete on price. We never compete on price. We want quality service. We want great service for customers. Our people are police checked. They're insured. We have a warranty system that will pay out if anything goes wrong. You have a fence built 5 years ago. It falls down because it was badly made. The franchise has gone, Jim's will fix it. So we give really serious protection to the clients to give great service, fast service, polite service, everything right, but we are not cheap. And this again is because we look at it from the franchisee's point of view. Yes, customers want great service, but they also want the lowest possible price. We want great service, but we want the best possible price because our problem is not customers, it's franchisees. Most of our people are completely flat out all year round.
Love that.
Our problem, we don't have enough franchisees. We're growing. We're not growing fast enough. 200,000 unserviced jobs in the last year. It's
Wow.
Yeah, it's massive. At one stage, it was close to a third of our clients were not serviced just after COVID. That was maniac. Now it's probably about 20%.
Wow.
It's a problem because the demand is so high. We've actually, in a lot of cases, we've stopped charging advertising to the franchisees because there's so much work. Dog walking people pay advertising for the last year because we just have so much work that we don't need to spend more money getting it. That's a strange problem. So the thing is, how can we make our franchisees successful? They've got to get a great hourly rate. So different philosophy. We are not cheap as chips. I told them that. Charge more. Overcharging is never a complaint. Now, if you don't bring a client back within 2 hours, 2 hours and 1 minute, that's a complaint. But if you charge a client, quote unquote, 10 times the opposition, that's not a complaint. The client may not be happy with it, but that's not a complaint in our view.
Yeah,
Overcharge, never a complaint.
love that. And I love that because you're so focused on customer experience that customers are getting the top end of the product, that the value is obviously a lot higher. Now, we are running out of time. You have got this amazing library of books behind you. Obviously, my recommendation is you got to read the Jim Penman book, but you're obviously a learner. You obviously read a lot. Do you have one recommendation or a book that you would recommend to a small business owner that's starting out in their journey of business? What book would you recommend that they read and why?
Well, apart from mine, of course.
Of course.
I love Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. I just love that book. I've read it multiple times. It just talks about character. It takes the long-term view. He's just an amazing guy. He's a dedicated Mormon. It's all about doing the right thing by people and being successful. It's all about win-win and begin with the end in mind. Just a phenomenal book about business. But you're right, actually. This book behind me, a tiny fraction, I would probably read on average about 2 books a week. I'd finish 2 books a week. I'd start more than that. Yeah, I listen to talking books all the time. I'm driving or gardening or anything. I'm listening all the time. I'm just that now listening to a talking book about NVIDIA, which is really, really interesting about how they started up and how hairy it was in the beginning and how this guy, it's just great stuff. I like reading, actually, generally speaking, I like reading business biographies. I like to know how somebody's done it, particularly trying to get at the early stages. One of the most wonderful books, Mark Randolph books, one of the founders of Netflix, That Will Never Work. That's just a magnificent book. You know, where they started off sending DVDs by post, which is the venture they were trying before the streaming thing. They couldn't even get a hell of a DVD, so they started posting CDs because it was the equivalent. So that's that. Oh, it's a wonderful book, beautifully written book, and just so great. But there's so many fantastic books around, and I tell you, one of the greatest things is Amazon. I have Amazon. I'm one of their best customers. They should give me a gold award.
I love it.
You look at these books there. I've got more books than this on my iPad, for heaven's sakes.
Yeah, I love that. I reckon you're high enough with some enough contacts to get a phone call from Jeff Bezos. So you should try to pursue that, Jim. I reckon you can make some calls to make that happen. We have run out of time. I'd love for you to come back on the bottom line in the future and see where I want to sort of maybe next time we can unpack how technology is going to impact some of these businesses. Like I said, as an accounting firm, we have plumbers, fencers, electricians, gym mowing. All of these guys are starting to get a little bit nervous around what AI might do. And a lot of people are saying be a plumber and you'll be fine, but I still think they're getting a bit nervous around what the future might hold. So I want to pick your brain on that. So if you're willing to come back on the bottom line, I'd love to have you again. But we have run out of time. I just want to say thank you so much for changing the lives of thousands and thousands of Australians that may have wanted to have an entrepreneurial journey, but having the backing of an amazing franchise like yourself and supporting those people have obviously turned these businesses into successes and lives and families into prosperous things. So I just want to say thank you from the bottom of my heart for the business community, and thank you for taking your time to join me today on the bottom line.
Yeah, no worries.